Hello. So we're going to have a little simple homeschool art lesson here this afternoon. And we're going to be moving towards how to do these two barn scenes, these two identical barn scenes, one in a cool color palette and one in a warmer color palette. But we're going to be using essentially the same colors of paint in each of our scenes, in the warm and the cool scenes. And we're going to be shifting the temperature of the paints to create the look, one being much warmer and one being much cooler. It almost looks like this might be early in the morning on a hot day, and this is more of like an evening painting. And we have to start that process though with getting a sketch. So we're going to take a look at the photograph that this painting was based on. Okay, so this photograph in the background, I took it a couple of years ago, not too far from where we live. And it's just a nice, simple scene with just having the barn on a little bit of a gentle slope and a tree line in the background. And it works really nice for doing this project. So we'll start. Get my little pointer thing going. We're going to start with a simple sketch of the scene. And to do that, we have to look at the perspective of the barn. And we could go into great detail and try to draw this barn perfectly in perspective, but that's not the point of this lesson. So we're going to be doing a really quick, kind of like an eyeballing the perspective of the barn. So we'll be doing that first. And for that part of the project, we're going to be using, you can just use a regular drawing pencil, or if you have one, you can use this General's Sketch and Wash water soluble graphite. And that's really fun when you're practicing your value studies. And that's the next point in the lesson, is we're also going to be paying close attention to the values in the scene. So values are the lights and the darks areas. So if we look at the photograph as it is right now, we can pretty easily see that this left side, the end of the barn, is in shadow. So it's a darker value. And then we see that this top part of the roof is a bit darker than this next large section of the roof. And then we have the front of the barn, the part that's facing us, we're going to call that the front, is definitely the lightest in value. And when we look even at the tree line, we can see it's so dark, it's almost black right here off to the right of the barn, and where the leafy sections on the tree go deep in, there's really dark shadows. And we see some shadows along the edge of the little driveway leading up to the barn. And for our purposes, we're going to pretend that this extra addition onto the barn is not there. And we're just going to do more trees on that side. So we'll do our little simple sketch, and we're going to use our water soluble graphite for noting the values. And then we're going to do the sketch again onto our canvas and start talking about how to create these unique color shifts in our painting. So I'm going to flip the camera here for just a minute and show you the sketch first. And I want to talk through some of the things that you see here on the picture before I flip the camera though to my sketch. When we are sketching a building, even if we're just doing a quick sketch, the first thing we want to notice is which corner out of all the corners that we can see, which one is closest or appears to be closest to us. So this barn, there's this back corner, there's this corner here, and then there's this corner on the right. And it would make sense that this corner here is the one that is closest to us. And I'm just using this highlighter kind of willy-nilly. So that's where we're going to start our drawing. So we're going to start with the first corner that's closest to us, and it's just going to be a vertical line. And then from there, from that corner, we can approximately get in the angles of the other parts of the barn. So from that first corner, I can note that this line here, it slopes down just a tiny bit. So it angles down towards the ground. And if I go from this corner to this corner, which there's some grasses obscuring it, but it appears to angle up just a tad. And then we have, of course, the end, the other corner of the barn. So that's to the right of our first corner. If we look to the left, we can see this section of the barn. Again, it's angling down towards the ground. And then the actual part of the barn that's touching the ground, it appears to be angling up just a smidge. So from there, we get this rectangular shape built or drawn in. That's going to give us the base for sketching our barn. So I'm going to switch over to the other camera and we're going to look at this on paper. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put in my kind of hillside there. And you can see I've already started with the corner that's closest. And then I'm going to do that front part of the barn, the long side, and just angle it slightly down towards the ground. So if this is the ground. In the bottom of the barn, kind of disappears under the grass, but it's angling up just a little bit. So we end up with this rectangular figure that is a little bit closer together at this end than it is at this end. Then I'm going to do the short end of the barn. And that line angles down. This line angles up a little bit. Sketch in that back corner of the barn. Okay, so now we've got our box. And this barn, I think they're called a hip roof barn. Well, the highest point when we looked at the picture was the peak that's on this end of the barn. So I'm gonna just eyeballing it, not doing any measuring. I'm gonna look for the middle of this end and come straight up from what I think is the middle, putting a little dot, and that's gonna be the peak of my barn. Now for this barn, coming off the peak, there's a little bit of a lopsided triangle going. So sketch that in, and then from the bottom edge of that triangle, we bring a long line down that also angles out. And you can see I didn't make the end of my barn quite big enough, but that's really easy to fix. I'm just going to bring that over. Bring my land up a little more. This is all going to get shaded in a minute. So there we go. There's the end of my barn. And then for the roof or the ridge line of my barn, it needs to angle down towards the ground a little bit. And I have to stop before I get to this corner because I need to have room to put in the angles of that roof that are on the other end. And there's that. Okay. So there we have our rough sketch of our barn. Let's see if I can get this in focused a little bit better. Okay. And because this sketch that I'm doing on paper is also going to be my value study, I'm going to go ahead and take this sketch and wash pencil and I'm going to use it on its side. And I'm going to blur, make some blurry gray here to indicate where some of the shadows are in the tree line. And I'm not even looking back at the picture right now. I'm just kind of going from memory. I think my tree line's gonna kind of come around like this on this end, but I know that the darkest point in that tree line was at this right end of the building. So I'm gonna press a little harder. I know on my barn that the darkest shadows were on the short end. So I'm gonna just rub some of this water soluble graphite in to there. I'm gonna make a little bit more tree line over here on this end. And probably not even gonna take the time to sketch out all that driveway. Just do a little bit. Okay, so this was the darkest end of my barn. Then there was kind of a medium value in this top part of the roof. This part of the roof was much brighter, and it really wasn't even shadow on the lowest part that you were seeing, but you were seeing some of the imperfections in the wood. So I'm just gonna rub in some of that. And whoops, it rolled away. The beauty of water soluble graphite is then you can take a damp brush with just some clean water and start moving that graphite around. It almost instantly turns into like a gray watercolor. So this is really fun for doing quick studies and things. And I can blend in this shadow end. I gotta pause for just a minute and get the cord for the computer. Yay, I got to it before the battery died. Let's get things readjusted here. Okay, back to our blending. I'm still just taking my damp brush and blending in the lines I made with the graphite. This is not, I'm not even trying to do this perfectly. This is just a practice sketch for our painting, and also getting familiar with where the darks and lights are in my painting. I do think when we go to paint the fields, because it is a crop, I think it was a soybean field, you know, things were planted in rows. And if I keep that in mind and just stroke my paint strokes in arcs coming down from the barn, it's gonna help give that feel of, oh yeah, this is not just a field of weeds. It's planted in with a certain order to it. Okay. So I think you can kind of see how we got our barn sketch and how we are noting the different areas of dark and light. Not going to do anything with the sky on that. Okay, so let's go back to, we'll go back to our picture here for just a minute. I'm going to be switching over to our canvas that we're going to be painting on. And I will show you a couple of the other practices that I did when I was working on this, and show you what paint colors we're working with. All right. So here on a little square canvas, I've sketched out the barn again. I didn't even do much else other than the barn. So I'll go ahead and indicate how I want my tree line. Okay. So the colors we're working with today, we've got the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. And then we have a little bit of white and a little bit of green just for convenience sakes. And I think I'll set this up here. There we go. So now you can kind of see it all. And obviously I just have one scene drawn here. The canvas that I suggested using was more of like an 8x10, and putting a piece of tape to divide it in half and then drawing our scene twice on the canvas. That makes a really great comparison and just a nice way to practice this color mixing. We'll go back to, and every time I paint this, it looks a little different too. And that's to be expected, and that is okay. So I think we're going to do something kind of crazy here, and I'm going to divide this canvas in half and talk about the colors and shifting the color temperatures. I'm going to do it right on the same drawing. Okay, and we only get these colors to use too. So even though we want one of our paintings to be cooler and one to be warmer, we're still using the same color of red both times. So we'll talk about the red first. So for red is a warm color. I think we'll do this half will be our cool and this half will be our warm. So regardless of what we want in the end, we're using the same color of red on our barn on both the cool side and the warm side. So I'm going to start by just blocking in the red on my barn. And this is going to be a loose enough painting. I am not concerned about having my edges be all perfectly straight yet. Now, I do know that this is in the value scale, this was the darker end of the barn. The top portion of the roof was also, it was like a mid value. So not as dark as the end, but it was definitely in somewhat of a shadow. So put that in. And then this section of the roof and this lower section were much, much lighter. So I'm going to do just a little bit. I think I'll put in that line. Okay. And then now I'm going to do some shifting. Okay, so if I'm wanting this side to be the cooler side, well, the only cool colors we have out are the blue and the green. And I know I don't want to mix the green in with the red, but I am going to take some of this blue and just a little bit of blue on my brush. And I'm going to come over here into this shadowy end of my barn. So I'm taking the warm colored of red and I'm blending in a cool color, the blue, to make a darker value. So it's still going to look red in the end, but in the shadows, it's going to look cooler by adding in a cool blue to the mix. Okay. And for this section that I know was a much lighter value, I'm going to use white. Just keep my line there. And again, there's just a little bit of blue left on my brush, so it's blended in a little bit, and that it's the purple color is what's making like the board texture. Okay. I'm gonna mix a little bit of the red and white, but I still want this top section to be a darker value. So I don't want to get too much white. Okay. So there's a roughed in cool end of the barn, just made by basically making a purple with the blue. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush real good because I want to switch to this end of the barn. This is our warmer side. So if I want to make the red even warmer, I can add a little bit of yellow and make some orangey tones. Adding that in with my red. And that's going to add, it's going to add some vibrancy because the orange is just very vibrant. And then if I pick up some of the white, I can keep my values right. Because again, on this end, the darkest value should be the top section. The mid value should be the slanted part of the roof. And the lightest value should be this straight side of the barn. Okay, give that a chance to focus in. Okay, so already it is looking I hope it shows up on the camera. In real life, it is looking quite a bit different. The colors are between the cool end and the warmer end. Now, I don't want to make this video too terribly long, but you're going to keep in mind as you paint your sky. Of course, your sky can be blue. It can have white mixed in to lighten it as it gets closer to the horizon. But we don't want to put any red areas in our sky or pink because we're wanting this side to be the cool side of the painting. So I'll just do a little, I'm not going to take time to finish it all. And when we get to our trees, green is already a cool color. So we don't have to worry about that. We're certainly not going to add any yellow in with our green because that would warm it up. But we need some shadow areas. So to shift the green to be darker but still cool, we can add some of the blue in to make a deep blue green, and that makes a really good shadow. And if we were going to get this all finished, we would also want to add our foreground. And our options are to use the green, to use the blue, to add some dark areas, make a little bit of foliage coming up in front of the barn. And we also can use white to get some highlight areas. But it's all looking very, very cool. On the warm side, we're not going to want to do a blue sky. We can, though, we can use some of our orange that we mixed. We can use some yellow, get a little more, might even get some straight red up towards the top of our canvas. When we look out at a scene in a landscape, if there's color in the sky, so if the sky's not completely cloudy, usually there's deeper color the higher you get and the closer you get to your horizon line. Usually it gets a bit lighter. And that is a good rule of thumb when you're doing landscape paintings. I'm doing this very quickly and imperfectly just to get a sample uploaded here. And when we go to do the trees, we still have our green to work with, but we want to warm it up. So to warm up our tree line, we're going to mix in some yellow. And when you mix yellow in with this true green, you're going to get a much warmer green, a much sunnier green, more like a spring green. And if we want some dark green though, how do we do that and keep it warm? Well, take some of your green, add some red to your green. So adding red to the green is going to darken that green up. It's going to move it more to almost like a brown color, but it will make a lovely, lovely dark shadow that works well with your warm greens. So if I'm wanting to shift warm, I'm just going to make sure that what I add in is a warm color. And if I want to shift cool, I'm going to make sure what I add in is a cool color. And this is a really fun thing to play with and to think about as you're doing a painting of what do I want the feel of this painting's temperature to be? Do I want it to feel warm? Do I want it to feel cool and peaceful? And to achieve that, it all comes down to my color choices. All right, I'm going to stop there. That one is quite quick, but I'll show you. So here's one of the other class examples. And I had the opportunity to do this several times. So here's another one where I was painting even faster. But you can definitely see this barn has a much more purple look to it. And this one has more of that true like brick red in the shadow areas and a little bit of orange. And I have one more. Ended up doing 2 cool paintings in a row. And again, it looks different every time because if you change just a little bit of your mixture, you're going to get a slightly different shade. There, I took the tape off. It's better when the tape's off. You're going to get slightly different shades depending on the ratio of which color you add in. And that's okay. That's part of the fun of this. So let me switch screen. Okay. Well, that is your art lesson for today. I hope you have a wonderful day and we'll see you all soon.